For 50 years, South Africa was divided into two types of people, black and white. For 50 years, black people in South Africa were educated to be dumb. For 50 years, anyone who challenged the government ended up in solitary confinement in a tiny cell or a shallow grave. For 50 years, the legislation that made up apartheid forbade love, unity, and democracy. Finally, after internal and international pressure, the government of the time overturned the legislation. In 1993, South Africa had its first truly democratic elections, and the country's shining light and leader, Nelson Mandela, was elected president. 14 years later, 40 high school students turned up in the international airport at Johannesburg, each of us toting black, shiny new laptops, each of us fired with the enthusiasm that comes with the feeling you're about to do good, each of us ready to collapse after our 16-hour flight. We were all there because 7 months earlier, the principal of St. Lawrence's College had come to our all-girls school in Indripilli and told us about his dream. He wanted to invite us to be part of a group who would go over to South Africa in mid-September and teach our peers in rural South Africa how to use computers, while we learnt about their history and culture. It is hard, upon reflection, to choose out of the many little moments that made up those 2 weeks in mid-September, which moment touched my heart the most, that made me truly hopeful for the future of humanity. Was it walking through the Apartheid Museum and seeing photographs of big armour-plated vehicles that used to carry gun-toting killers? The nooses hanging from the roof that symbolised the deaths of every political prisoner, or the wall covered with every law of apartheid, laws that broke hearts and destroyed families? Was it travelling to Robben Island, the high-security, barbed and razor and electrical wire-surrounded political prison, and listening to our tour guide, Glenn, a prisoner of 19 years, who showed people through his former prison to prevent anyone forgetting apartheid, who taught us about the value of love, unity and forgiveness? Was it finally arriving in Ashawi, driving into the country for half an hour, arriving at the school, sitting down at the desk that seated 3 at a time, pressing the on button of the laptop, and watching my first 20-year-old student's eyes light up when the screen did? Was it going to the local daycare centre for orphans whose big brothers and sisters were at school, and watching a 4-year-old child, whose poor diet stunted his growth so that he looked 2, press his hands so tightly together and squeeze his eyes so tightly shut that he shook with faith as he prayed to his God, the greatest hope he had? No. The most amazing, most liberating, most beautiful thing that I witnessed happened in our last few hours on the motherland of humanity. We were staying at a youth hostel in Johannesburg with 2 other groups of young people, very poor black kids from the infamous Soweto and a group of upper middle class white kids. And in the 2 hours before dinner, as the sun began to throw orange and pink and red light over the vast lawn of that hostel, all 3 groups of young people, Zulu and Afrikaans and Australian, played and talked and laughed together. And then I went home.